I'll tell you real quick, I know some people asked about handouts and notes, so I'll go over that just the way I do class. I will have some notes, and actually I'll have these, and I'll pass them around. I have pens if you didn't have pens, because I'm trying to be prepared and be a good adult. That's fun. So this is the paper. It's notes right here on the back, and on the other side is just some quick bullet points. It's not fancy or anything, but I just copied these pretty much straight off of what I teach from. So here's what I will say though. I'll have you pass them down. Don't read this if you would do me that favor. Don't even look at it till afterwards. And I'll tell you why. I'll let you go ahead and pass them if you want. Don't feel like you have to take it, but if you want to, that's there for you as a resource. I don't do fill in the blank stuff. Some people ask about that. I hate fill in the blank because usually you look for like the magic word that completes the sentence. And then what that does is that distracts you from the whole thought of what the sentence is. And then you're just waiting for me to say like the magic word, and you don't actually learn what I'm trying to teach or what, you're just listening for this one little thing. So I don't do fill in the blank. If you are a fill in the blank person, sorry, I'm not, and I'm teaching you, you're not. So that's how I'll do it, and what I'd like is, like I said, don't do me a favor, don't even read the other side, because I don't want you to look for certain things I'm saying. I just want you to say, like, that stood out to me, I like that, I want to remember it, boom, write it down. That's all I want. This isn't going to be tests, so it's not like a real class or anything, so it's not like you're looking for specific information because it might come up later. This is just like, is this going to be helpful for you? If it is, write it down so you can remember it or come back, or maybe you're just like, what in the world did he say? Write it down. Maybe you can look it up later, or maybe I'm an idiot and I said something wrong. So both are fine. So that's how we'll do it. I'll introduce myself real quick in case I know. Happy birthday, Ryan.
Thank you.
So in case you don't know me, or you haven't met, I'm Rob Watson. I am the Fuse pastor. Hey guys, this is my seat whenever you're going. I won't get this one for like a couple minutes. Hey buddy. Anyway, but I'm Rob. I'm the Fuse pastor, so that's middle school. It's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is what I do. So if I haven't met a lot of you, which is probably the case, is the case some of you, it's because I'm usually holed up back here in the conference center. That's what I do. I go to 9 o'clock services normally, and I usually come in late and leave early so I can get ready. So I'm kind of like in my little shell. But if we haven't met, introduce yourself. I'm horrible at names. I already told some of you that, so if I forget, don't take it personally, because I'm the worst named person in the history of the world. I've tried everything. It don't work. I don't know what it is. So, but I love to meet you guys. Glad you're here. Just so you know a little bit about me, I graduated from Ozark Christian College in 2012. I got 2 degrees. I got my bachelor's in Christian ministry, which is just fancy words for I work in a church someday. And then associate's degree in music, which kind of speaks for itself. And apologetics, I don't have a master's or a doctorate or like anything super fancy like that in apologetics, but it's something I'm super passionate about. It's something I enjoy. It's something that I got into early on, and it's just something I've been studying for a long time. I did apply in 2012 to get my master's at Tyler School of Theology in California, and I was accepted, and then I saw the $1,500 credit hour and went, I got enough debt. So as of now, there is no master's in apologetics, but that might come in the future, we'll see. So that's me. That's kind of why I'm teaching. They just said, hey, do you want to teach a class? I said, do you need me to? They're like, yeah. I said, okay, I'll teach a class. They said, what do you want to teach? I said, I don't know, what do you want me to teach? And so he's like, how about you teach apologetics since you like enjoy that thing? So that's why I'm doing it. It's something I'm super passionate about. But I'll pray real quick and we'll just kind of jump into things. Sound good? If more people, I'll kind of close this door a little bit. If people want to trickle in, then that's fine too. I know there's some that already come in late. But, alright, we'll pray. God, I thank you for today. I thank you for just the weather that we get to see your creation and the works of your hands, and just give you glory for that, God. I thank you that we get another chance to learn something new about you, to glorify your name in a new way today. And I just pray that you are working in all our hearts and that we have moments to just clearly hear from you today. God, we love you. It's in your Son's holy name that we pray. Amen. Well, I'll do a longer intro to myself to start. I grew up in a Christian home, which is cool. I had awesome parents. They were both Christians. Actually, me and my brother were born in Hartford, Connecticut, which is weird, but my parents moved out there from Joplin to do inner city ministry. So my dad had this heart to work with underprivileged people and youth specifically in the inner cities, those primarily African American communities. So that's where I grew up, and I grew up in the church. I knew all the Bible stories. I knew how to say every book of the Bible. I could do it in one breath, by the way. Pretty cool. Actually, useless, but cool. I knew where the books were, and I could say all the right answers, look smart. So I grew up in a great home, grew up in the church. But I remember I always equated growing up, like having questions about my faith, or about God or Christianity, or having doubts with, I would basically say, like it was wrong. I remember that clearly because it's kind of easy to make that assumption because we all hear the sermons. You get a sermon about Peter and he's walking on the water and he's walking towards Jesus like, this is awesome, and then he takes a bite off Jesus and what happens? He falls down. He starts drowning, he gets scared and he cries out, he's like, Jesus, help me. And Jesus comes over and he pulls him out, and we all know what he says. He looks at him and goes, Peter, you have little faith. And I always assumed, like, okay, I have these questions. Rob, you had such little faith. If I just had bigger faith, I wouldn't have doubts, right? If I had bigger faith, I wouldn't have questions about God, because it's kind of wrong to have questions or doubts, right? And that's what I assumed growing up. So I remember in second or third grade, it was one of those 2 years, second or third grade, I went to a private school at the time. And they had this guest speaker at a chapel. We had these little chapels, it was like a small church service, basically. So they had this guest speaker, and they get up and they introduce the guy. I don't remember his name or anything like that. Usually in second grade, I was just like counting my fingers and waiting till it was over. But I remember that particular time, he gets up and he goes, I'm going to teach you how to tell your friends that like God's real, that Jesus is God, the Bible is true. And I remember I sat up and I was like, whoa, like this is cool, like this is going to be really interesting. So I was excited, leaned in, and the first thing he says is, okay, now take out your Bibles and turn to, and he calls out the scripture. But like I remember in that moment, my heart just like sank a little bit. And when we get to the scripture and he reads it out and goes, okay, and see this shows, Jesus is the Son of God, and not just the Son, but like he wasn't created, but he is God, he's the same as God. And we're like, okay, he goes, okay, now turn to this scripture, and he calls it out, and we all turn there, and he reads it out, and goes, and this shows that God is, he's creator, he's almighty, he's awesome, he created everything. I'm like, okay. And then he said, now turn to this scripture, so we turn to it, and we start reading, and he says, and this shows, that the Bible's true, and it's real, and everything we read is from the Bible, so that means that God is real. And I remember at the end of it, I just was so sad, because I'm going, what if my friends don't believe in the Bible to begin with? And I was like a second, third grader, and I just want to tell my friends that Jesus was true, and like prove to them, this is real. I got so heartbroken, I was like, now I don't know what to do. And then, you guys go ahead and find zero. So I remember being so incredibly sad or upset in that moment. And if you want to fast forward like a couple more years, got into high school, I fell away from the faith. I still went to church. I was still even a good Christian kid or pastor's kid, whatever you want to call it. I showed up. I just didn't show up. You know what I mean? I sat there, but they were just words that didn't mean anything. I was just kind of there because my parents wanted me there, so I was just making them happy. So I kind of felt like, I remember in my senior year, my dad came to me, he made an agreement. He said, hey Rob, if you would just go to Christian college just your first year of college, that's it, just your first year, your mom and I will help pay as much as we can for college. Okay, hear me on this, I was a huge idiot, like biggest idiot ever in high school, but I was at least smart enough to take him up on that. So I'm like, okay, I know college is really expensive, I've heard about it, and I've seen some of the numbers, so I was like, okay, I will go to Ozark Christian College my first year, my freshman year, and after that, done. I'm coming back, I'm leaving, I'm moving back to St. Louis, where all my friends are, where my girlfriend's at, and I'm going to go to Washington University and major in guitar because I'm destined to be a rock star. That's what I'm supposed to do. So that was the plan. But to make a long story short, throughout that time, I kind of felt God kind of pulling on my heart, calling me, and I thought, okay, you know what? I know I'm not supposed to be in ministry because I hate talking and I don't ever want to do that. Come on, be in ministry, no. But at least I know being at this school, being in this place surrounded by godly people is good for me. And I got pulled back to God. I said, all right, God, I'll stay. And to make it even longer story, a little bit shorter, in my second year, I even got to the point where I'm going, God, okay, maybe ministry is on the table, maybe. I don't know if there's a ministry where you only play guitar, because I don't sing, and I definitely don't talk in front of people. I never want to do that ever. Funny sense of humor, that's right. So I was like, but maybe ministry is on the table. And I decided, okay, I'll do this. If you want, I'll do it. And it was that moment, that time period. I remember this like super clearly. I went home for Christmas break. And if you know, college Christmas breaks are like a month long. It's awesome, it's great, because you get this long time. And I was at home, and I just really decided to take this stuff seriously. So I'm going, okay, I'm in all the way. And I remember I had like all these questions. It seemed like at once too. All these questions that I had growing up. All these questions I never really let myself ask, because remember, questions are bad. You have to have strong faith, so you can't ask questions, you can't have doubts. They all came at me like at once, it seemed like. And then I would sit there and be going like, man, I want to take this seriously, I want to do this mystery thing, like I'm all in, right? But how do I know God's even real to begin with? Like all I got is the Bible to prove God's real, but what if you don't believe in the Bible in the first place? What am I supposed to do with that? Or if God's so good, then why are these bad things happening? Like, why is there even evil to begin with? I don't understand, and I couldn't answer any of these questions. And I just like sunk deeper and deeper in this pit, and I realized I have no reason to believe anything that I think I believe in. And I think about it, but I have no answers. It got so bad that I decided I quit. Like I can't do it. I can't believe in any of this. I don't know how. I have no reasons to believe in any of this. It got to the point where I was ready to get on the phone and call the school and just say, hey, I'm dropping out. I'm going to enroll back in Washington University. I'm going to go back and do, major in guitar. And I remember it was in that moment where I was about to like call the school and just be like, I'm done. I can't do this. I remembered one thing. It was. It's kind of hard for me to do. I remember one thing in the moment, and it was in a music theory class of all classes that I took at Ozark. Not a Bible class, not anything spiritual, music theory. We had a free day, and somebody had asked a question just about God. And it was one of those, hard questions, that kind of one of those catchy questions that you like to argue about. And I remember the teacher brought up a video, and it was about this guy just explaining it. But this guy had thought through his faith in a way I'd never heard anybody think through before. He had philosophy for his faith. He had, some history to back it up. He had some science. He really thought this through. I'd never heard anybody speak like this, and I'm going, whoa, like, this is pretty awesome. Like, this is incredible. I didn't remember the guy's name. I didn't remember anything, who he worked for, what he did. All I remembered is that he was from India and that he was smart. So somehow, by the grace of God, I Googled this and actually found the guy. His name's Robbie Zacharias. You guys probably heard, yeah, everyone's going, yeah, I'd never heard of this in my life. I'm going, who is this guy? I looked it up, and he had these videos on YouTube. And it was, how do I know God exists, or why Jesus, and if God's good, why is there evil, and the problem around, and he went through all these things, and I just started watching. I would just click and watch a video, and I'd watch another one, and I'd watch another one, and I'd watch another one. I sat there for hours just watching these videos of this guy talking. And if you don't know, Robbie Zacharias is an apologist. That's what he does. He masters, he majors, got his doctorates in apologetics. He teaches that. That saved my life. It did. I went back to school. I ended up getting back involved and going, okay, I can actually believe this. I got a ground, I have a substance. I can actually believe my faith now. This is pretty incredible. And that started the journey, okay? My journey to apologetics. Because I found that there's actually answers to these hard questions that I had never let myself ask before. Here's what I want you to know today. If you walk out with something, today's kind of like the big on-ramp into apologetics. We'll get into some stuff, but it's really just a big introduction on why apologetics. And this is what I want you to walk away knowing. That your faith, like Christianity, God, it's intellectually satisfying. It's not just this thing you have to believe because we said so and it's true and you're either right or wrong. It's intellectually satisfying. You can think it through and it makes sense and it's satisfying. And here's the other thing. Your faith is like incredibly, incredibly deep. And I'm not just talking about like apologetics or like philosophically or whatever. Like, your faith is super deep. There's so much to it. When Jesus was born, and around probably 33 AD is when he died. Usually we think it's here. Well, it's around 33 AD, and most of the New Testament was written before 70 AD, so that gives you like almost 2,000 years of times after the Bible had been completed and written, of people who had a relationship with Jesus, and they write about it and they tell you about it. There's so much to dive into. I mean, you can look at the original language, the Greek, the New Testament was written, and the Hebrew, the Old Testament was written, and pull out stuff that you would never have got before if you not dived into the deep and learned your faith. You can learn about the thousands of years of Jewish history that kind of make up the entire Old Testament, which kind of makes up the New Testament too, because they were all Jews when they wrote it, so kind of important. There's so much to your faith. I'm not just saying apologetic is deep and it's intellectually satisfying. I think that is incredible. I think that's absolutely incredible. Apologetics is just this. If you don't know, it just means like a defense for your faith. That's the short term. Apologetics is just a fancy word for defending your faith. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, Peter's writing to one of his churches that he's the head of, and he says, "Always be ready to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope you have." Now, in the Greek, the word answer that he uses when he says, "Hey, always be ready to give an answer," is this. It's apologia. And if you haven't already made the association, that's where we actually get the word apologetics in English. So apologia just gets translated answer. So when we're talking about apologetics, we're just saying it's having an answer. So someone goes, "Well, why God?" You got an answer. If someone says, well, how can you do this if God's so good? Why this? Or I saw this. How can you be a Christian? Apologetics is all about finding an answer. And maybe you're going, well, Peter doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, cool. Well, Jesus in Matthew chapter 10, he's about to send all his disciples out. And he gets them together and he says, hey, he's giving kind of the send off. And he says this, I want you to be as shrewd as vipers and as innocent as doves. A lot of times we don't like that verse, like shrewd, that sounds good. But another word for shrewd is usually cunning, intelligent, smart. I want you to think. I mean, this is probably the most powerful brain muscle you have in your body is your brain. But we don't always train it. We train our bodies, we get good at that, and we say, oh, you gotta be spiritual, but what's that? But we never think about like becoming shrewd for God or becoming intelligent for God, like training your brain for God. That's a real thing. I believe in that. And that's what he's talking about. And here's the thing with apologetics. I really think like the church needs to know this. And by church, I don't just mean like the pastors need to all know this, so I mean like you. That you guys actually need to know apologetics. I'm not saying knowing apologetics makes you a better Christian. I don't think that. God doesn't have like this little checkboard. He's going, well, you learned apologetics. Someone's getting another jewel in their crown when you die. Like, that's not what's going to happen. You don't become a super Christian because you know apologetics or you have this answer. But I think it's like incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important that you at least think this through and know it. Because, in my opinion, Christianity, the church, is kind of losing in the public arena. I mean, if you're talking about education, you can't even bring up the idea of creation or a creator without, being mocked, essentially, without becoming an instant laughing stock in the realm of science. I mean, you can't teach it really, and now basically, what are we, like stupid bigots in most people's minds? That's what they think of when they think of the Christians. We're losing in the realm, and if you want to ask, I know there's a lot of things that feed into that, but if you said, Rob, what's one of the biggest things that hurt the church in the past 3 decades to the past century, I would say, we forgot about teaching apologetics. And so when we got into the public arenas and the education, we weren't able to sustain ourselves and give really good answers that were intellectually satisfying to other people, and they said, you guys are all stupid. And we got wrote off with that. We kind of got okay with that. We kind of sunk down a little bit intellectually. And I'm not saying it was any one person's fault or one movement or one group, but I think, man, if we had fixed that, we could rewind the clocks and kind of get better at teaching this. Things might be a little bit different today. And here's why I think it's super important that, like, the church, you guys, can know apologetics and at least be able to teach it a little bit. Because right now, in service, or later on today, there's going to be a young adult who's in college, they're in their 20s, and they're sitting there, and they're just trying to figure out if everything they believed up until this point is actually true. Because they got big questions, they're there. They're hard questions with hard answers, and they're going, I don't know how to answer this. this might be the last time they step foot in a church. You kind of need to know apologetics and at least be able to teach it, at least be able to have like an answer for your faith if somebody asks you a hard question. Because 8 to 9, that's like 80 to 90% out of 10 students. So if we took most of the students that are going to leave our youth ministry, when they hit college, they're going to walk away and just not come back. And you probably heard that stat before because it's scary and we like to intimidate people and ooh, guess what? But you want to know why I think part of that reason that stat exists in such a high number is because they get into universities, they get into the real world, they get out there away from their parents' faith. And now they got to own it, but they don't have answers to these questions that maybe were bugging them in the back of their head. Or they sit in class and the teacher says, well, if your God's so good, why? Tell me why this happened. And they go, I don't know. And they never had an answer, they never had an apologia, a defense, and they walk away. I know there's other reasons for that, but I think that's a huge part. I think if you want to take that stat and push it way down, this is one of the main places to start with is apologetics. I think you guys need to kind of know apologetics. I'm not saying be masters, but you need to know about it. You need to be able to teach it. Because right now in Crossing Kids, there's a second grader or third grader who's just like, I just want to tell my friends that Jesus is real. I just want to be able to prove it so they'll come to church. So they'll know that I'm right about this whole thing. And they don't know how to do it because we won't teach them. Or maybe like you need to know apologetics or kind of be able to teach it a little bit. Because there's a middle schooler who just thinks they're sinning because they had a question about their faith. There's a middle schooler who thinks they're sinning because they just doubted for a second and they thought, oh, poor me, if I just had better faith. If I was just, better than Peter, the guy who wrote most of the New Testament, no big deal, started the church. If I was just better than that guy and had bigger faith, then I wouldn't have these doubts. The reason I like apologetics so much is because, the best thing, hands down, that I ever did for my faith was learn this. And I wish I could tell you as a pastor that, I never doubt, or I never wavers, but it feels like every other week there's a moment where I go, oh, what if I got this all wrong? And I'm supposed to be the one that teaches you guys all this stuff. So here's what I'm going to say. Having big faith doesn't mean that you don't necessarily have doubts or don't have questions. But this saved my faith in college, and I am losing count of how many times it saved it since. Because there'll be moments where I'm just done, I'm going, this is too hard, this doesn't make sense, I can't go with this. But then I'll think through, I learned this, and this kind of seems to point to God, and I learned this, and you know what, that kind of seems to point to God, and how could this exist without God? And I'll just go, all right, you got me again. And every time I want to run away, it's like this lasso of apologetics that God is just holding, just kind of wraps me and drags me back. That's why I love apologetics. That's why I think you guys need to get into this. You need to know it. And I'm not saying you need to become a master apologist. But you need to at least have a good answer. If your kid asks, your friend, and I don't know why you guys are in this class. Maybe you're just curious. Maybe it's more personal. Maybe you're going, man, I need to know how to answer this. You got a loved one, you have a friend, you have a coworker, someone that you're going, man, I need to learn so I can teach them. That's awesome. Or maybe you're just curious. I just want you to leave today knowing Christianity is intellectually satisfying. That's incredible. Don't miss how important that statement is. That's phenomenally incredible. It's not just blind, dumb faith. We'll talk about that later. Faith is important, don't get me wrong. It's kind of a sticky word to define sometimes. But the best thing I ever learned to do, the best thing I ever learned to do for my faith personally was learn apologetics and teach myself how to dive into the deeper things of God. And that's what I want this class to be about. And we'll go over more what it looks like. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a theory each week. And I don't want you to think this is a comprehensive class. It's not going to be comprehensive. And we're going to fly pretty darn fast and hard through this stuff. Because if we were doing this, I'm going to kind of have to teach it at a collegiate level, kind of like it's a college course, because that's just the nature of what you're learning, is it's that elevated. We could spend a whole semester on each theory. We're going to spend 30, 40 minutes a week, so it's going to be awesome. But here's my goal. My goal isn't you to walk out this door going like, I know everything, and you're just like shooting down doubters and sinners left and right with your apologetics and you're good to go. That's as awesome as that would be. And look at this. I do want you to walk out the door knowing way more than you knew before you walked in. And I want you to have an answer. And I'm going to do my best to give that to you. But at the end of the day, what I really, really want from this whole class, from this whole 8-week apologetic journey, is for you to walk out and just go, I know where to find some answers. Or I learned about this theory and this is really good. My whole goal is just to kind of get your feet wet a little bit. To just show you like, this is apologetics, look at this. And to tell you like, there's a deep end. And it's really cool. The deep end's so much better than the shallow end because there's a diving board and you can find pennies if your grandpa's throwing them in the pool and all kinds of fun stuff. The deep end's way more fun than the shallow end. My whole goal is just to get your feet a little bit wet in 8 weeks. Give you places to start digging, start learning, and then just hope you dive in. That's the whole goal of the class. So we are going to go through a theory each week. And what we'll do is at the end of the lessons, I try not to go a whole hour if I can. I don't like to hear myself talk that much, so I know you don't. So I'll do it kind of quick, and what we'll do is at the end, if you want to have groups, I'm not going to put stipulations like with your recorder, if it's 2 people, if it's 10 people, cool, whatever you want to do. I'll let you have some time if you want to discuss that or trade notes and say, well, this is what stood out to me, this is what stood out to me, this is what I liked. Maybe you can talk about it, and I think that's at least pretty important, because I went through some dark times going through apologetics, really hard. There's a reason I said like hard questions and hard answers the whole time, because it's not easy. It wasn't like a big walk in the park where it's like all of a sudden I just saw the light and it was apologetics and I was like, yeah, it was hard. Like, you gotta think through everything. You gotta re-solidify things in your faith that you just thought were like stone cold. So it's hard, but it's 100% worth it, because now I'm on the other end and I'm going, I know why I believe this. I have some answers. And this is pretty incredible. That's a pretty incredible thing. If I had somebody walking alongside me through those times, that process would have been twice as easy. Like the whole iron sharpens iron thing in Proverbs is a real thing. So if you have at least one other person, and maybe you at the end you just go like, let's go through this book, let's watch this video, or let's just talk about, that will take you a long, long ways. I wish so badly I had been smart enough to ask somebody about some of the questions I had, because I tried to make that journey alone. And I had God the whole way. I believe that 100%. But it didn't make it any easier on me to be alone in that. So that's one reason I want you guys to have groups. And here's what we'll do for class. I will open up a Q&A time at the end. So I know sometimes I'll think through and be like, Rob, you did a good job explaining that. And then I'll look and everyone's going, then I'll go, Rob, you did not do a good job. So if we get to a point at that and you're just like, what? We'll open up a Q&A so you can ask a question and maybe I can explain something I thought I did awesome at, but actually turns out I was terrible at. Like I said, part of the nature of this class is not necessarily that you walk out with 100% comprehension of everything I said. Actually, if you do that, I would be astounded and will prove to me how dumb I actually am, because I had to go through this a long time. I remember I would get the podcast of like this Ravi Zacharias guy when I first started. I didn't know any of this philosophy stuff. I didn't know anything about apologetics, and I would drive in the car and listen, and he would say something, and I'd be like, huh? And so I just pause and just think about it, and just kind of drive for 10 more minutes, just going, what did he just say? Then I'd play again and keep talking again, and I go, huh? And I have the pause. So it's a journey. It gets there, but oh, where is it worth it? So that's what we're gonna do. Does anybody real quick have any questions so far? I know it's just kind of introduction. No? Okay, cool. But we'll open up a Q&A time at the end. And another thing I'm going to do, and this is going to feel so weird to say this, I think. We're not going to be in the Bible a lot. And that's really weird as a pastor to say that. And some of you are going, what is wrong with you? Here's why. Apologetics generally has 3 avenues by which you learn apologetics or to prove your faith. One of them is through philosophy. So thinking about things, how can we know what we know, this exists, so on, etc. We'll get to that in a little bit. You can talk about science, so we can point to, there's evidence. In science is, there's this, and this must point to a creator, this must point to a God, and so on. We'll hit a little bit of that. And then lastly, there's through history, so we can look at the Bible, historical text, and we can verify, there's this city here, and this is where it is, and we have archaeology, and we dug this up, and we found this. So there's usually 3 verifications by which we do apologetics to begin with. I hate history in general, so sorry if you're a history buff. I like church history, actually, don't get me wrong, I know a lot about that. But general history, this isn't my forte, archaeology, talking about this stuff. We will hit some of it, maybe, asterisks by that. At the very last class, I actually wrote in one theory, and it's okay, but it's kind of a weird one, and so I like to go through it really quick. And so if we have time, we'll hit something in history with the resurrection theory, which is pretty awesome. It's one of my favorite ones, especially under the category of history. So we'll do that. Science, we'll hit some of that. It'll actually be 2 weeks from now. The lesson will be Science First God, so we'll kind of hit some of those themes, talk about some major things. I am more proficient in philosophy, and I think it trumps everything, and here's why. History tends to be very circumstantial, and there's a ton of argument. So even when somebody finds an ancient text and it seems to be talking about something in the Bible, there's another guy who's a scholar and say, well, this actually means this because you're talking about dead languages that have survived thousands of years, and we're interpreting them later, and then they're looking at this. And there's a lot of circumstantial evidence in history, and I think there's some really powerful stuff for the Bible, don't get me wrong. If that's your forte, cool, you do that, keep pursuing that. But it tends to be surrounded by a lot of controversy. So generally, on the historical side, I tend to not lean towards that as I'm coming out guns a-blazing, this will be my answer. Tend to not lean in history. Science I do like, but as I said in the public realm, even just mentioning, there you go, that's the word. Even just mentioning, like, what is wrong with that word? mentioning. Okay, even just mentioning, here we go, I can talk English, hey. Even just mentioning a creator as a theory tends to get you written off pretty quick. And if you're talking to someone that actually has a pretty, scientific background, if their job is in the sciences, and I'm including mathematics in this as well, that'll get you written off pretty quick. And there's some leading guys and some good theories, but generally philosophy. Let me show you this. Science is this. You guys know about the scientific process and how you do things. A equals B. And you go through and you have a hypothesis and you prove it by recurring facts. Science is basically all based off of observation. Like all of science. We observe something, can we reproduce the results by doing this? Yes, we can. Let's see if we can do it again. I have this hypothesis about this, and so I've observed. Science is almost 100% observation. We won't get into physics, but science is observation for the most part. It's what it's all based on. Philosophy usually it circumvents that, and it says, why do we know what we know to begin with? Why is the world even intelligible? And we'll get into this more later. But why can you even understand the world to begin with? Philosophy seeks to answer that question, so it actually trumps science and history, and that's why I tend to spend most of my time on the philosophical side. Now I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but what I want to do, like I said, is we will hit some scientific theories, we'll hit some historical theories, because I don't want to just make this like a just philosophical side. But what I want to do is answer this question. If someone comes to you and says, why do you believe in God? How do I know God exists? I want you to at least have a start, a foundation that you can build on, saying, well, here's why, here's why, here's why. And now that list will get longer and longer the more you study, the more you go. But I think generally, the first things that come at them with, and I don't mean that in an attack way, but the first thing I will answer and say is always going to be from a philosophical standpoint. Because if they start throwing off, well, what about this layer of the Earth's crust, and how do you explain? And if there really was a whole universal flood, I'm like, how can you even understand science to begin with? And they're like, whoa, gotcha. That's why I do philosophy, okay? And I would say that jokingly. You're not trapping people, you're not attacking people. And we'll talk more about that later, but that's why I tend to sit here. And if you want other stuff that talks more about this, I have a list of resources that I'll give you. I have them now, I didn't print them off, so I'm going to wait until we get a little bit further on, because I want you to at least hear some of the other theories before you go jumping into a specific, book or something that I pointed out. But if you want some of those, you can find me. But this is kind of why we won't really be in the Bible a ton, because we're talking about how can we know what we know, and it is going to point to God, and there are biblical texts. But if someone doesn't believe in the Bible to begin with, opening it isn't going to get you very far. And that sounds so weird for me to say, because I 100% believe in the validity of the Bible. I believe it's the most powerful book that's ever been written. And I believe that without the Bible actually in form on words, even philosophically, we'd be in a really bad place. So I needed to do this. But if someone doesn't believe it to begin with, where do you start to say, this is why I think God exists? You need something that kind of is outside that points inside to it. And we'll talk about that more later. But that's why it's not like I'm not going to ever bring a Bible to class, okay? So don't freak out, that thing. But that's generally why. I just wanted you to be aware of that before we started. If you're going like, why doesn't this dude ever open his Bible? Does he hate it? No, I love it. I read it every day. It's amazing. But I just want you to be aware of how we approach stuff. One other thing I'm going to do just to clarify kind of what we're going to go through, how I'm going to teach stuff. There's a lot of stuff to apologetics. There's a lot of different avenues, a lot of venues, a lot of different things. We already talked about history, science, philosophy are 3 things, but even then it starts breaking down more and more. What I'm basically going to deal with for this class is Christianity, so belief in God, and we'll talk a little more so, but I'm just even going to talk about a theistic deity, so one God instead of monotheistic, a bunch of gods. That's mainly where I'll land versus atheism. And the reason why is, one, in the public realm, this tends to be the leading, when you're going anywhere educationally wise, this tends to be the leading view in America. Now there's a lot of others out there. I know we're not immune to that. But the problem is, if we're going to do Christianity versus Islam or New Age, or we're going to hit Buddhism or Hinduism and all these other philosophies or religions, you basically have to have another day just for each separate one, because they have their own set of beliefs that you have to look at and then say, well, this is why Christianity, and line them up. But the thing that these all have in common is they all believe in some kind of deity, for the most part, started the world. So that's why I'm mainly going to deal with, if you at least have the common ground of we were created, there is a reason for life and existence, there's a purpose to all this, you at least have a little bit of a common ground to start building off and go, well, let me tell you why Jesus. Let me tell you why the Judeo-Christian God. So that's what we're going to mainly deal with, is just this whole issue of is there even a God to begin with? Is there even God? And you can make the jumps after. There's a lot. So like I said, I have material resources for you. I know some of you may be here for personal reasons. Maybe my dad is, or my mom, or my whoever it is in my life, and they believe this. And maybe it's another religion. Maybe they're they believe they're Islamic, they're Hindu, they're Buddhist, they're some weird New Age. I don't even know what they believe. And maybe that's it. I got resources to help you out, but for this particular journey, we're just going to kind of stick there. Let's see how much time we got. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far after that? Just want to make sure I'm not flying too fast. No? Okay. I will give you the short preview into apologetics, and this is actually going to be a theory. This is going to be kind of a philosophical-ish statement. Let me precursor this by saying it's a little bit weak, but we don't have a ton of time, and I want you to know at least something to walk out and go like, I learned apologetics today, instead of just why it's important. So this is something called Pascal's wager. Is anyone familiar with this? No? Okay. Maybe one or two. I'll show you at the end why I think it's a little bit of a weak argument, but I was sitting in class one time and I had a teacher say, like, if somebody asked you how would you prove God, what would you say? And I just went, it's a hefty question there, professor. And so I raised my hand. I was like, you mean like in general, or you just want like one argument? Like, what? You need to like narrow this down. He's like, well, if somebody just sat down at a coffee shop and they said, hey, why do you believe in God? Or how do you know God exists? Whatever the question is, what would you say to them? I said, well, it's a long answer, but I'd probably start with Pascal's wager. And generally, it's a good starting place. It's a good argument. I'll show you why it's weaker, but this is what the wager is. So we'll draw ourselves a little chart. Pardon my drawing. I'm not really an artist. So we have this poorly drawn grid. And we'll have our different columns. So in this column, we'll say, we'll just say it's me for fun. So this is me and I don't believe in God in this column. And then in this column, this is me and I do believe in God. Now, there's two options with anything. I can either be right or I can be wrong. Now, so we're just going to take this column by column and just kind of fill it out logically. In this column, I do believe in God. I die. Turns out, I'm right. Hey-o. There's no God. What happens? Nothing. I just go back to being atoms and molecules, just part of the universe, whatever you want to call it. So, nothing. I die, I'm right. Cool. Turns out there's no God. Okay? I die. I don't believe in God. God doesn't exist. Turns out I'm wrong. Oops. What happens then? I got eternity, right? And in hell. If we're taking the Christian belief, which I'm assuming we all believe in Jesus and we're Christians, so I will kind of go off of that assumption. But yeah, that's not so great. Not that option. Now let's flip the switch and go over here. I do believe in God. I die. Turns out I'm right. Hey-ho. Heaven. Eternity in heaven. That's pretty nice. I do believe in God. I die. Oof, turns out everything I believed in was totally wrong. There is no God. What happens? Same thing. Absolutely nothing. Now, Pascal's wager is basically this. He looked at it and he said, I'm going to put my bets, I'm going to put all my chips on one side. I'm going the side that ends in eternal awesomeness or nothing instead of the alternative, which is either still nothing or hell. Now, here's why this is kind of weak. It's correct, but I think it's weaker because I would never just come out, shoot somebody with Pascal's wager, and go, boom, gotcha. Here's why. I believe that anybody who actually encounters God, like Jesus, like you read the scriptures and you have a relationship with them, would never be satisfied just get out of hell. I believe that. I don't think fear is a good motivator. And John, 1 John says, perfect love casts out all fear. I don't think just going, well, hey, bud, you can bet on that, but if you're wrong, you get hell, so good luck, see ya, I gotcha. I don't think anybody who actually encounters the God I know is just going to be satisfied with, all right, I'm doing this because I looked at the other end and it just was more in my favor to say I believed in this God. I don't think that's how it really works. Now, this could be a good start. If someone said, Rob, why do you believe in God? And maybe we're sitting in the coffee shop and I take the napkin and I just say, let me show you something real quick. This is easy. You just draw this out and say, you know what? I looked at the options. And you know what? This just kind of seems like a better option. But then I got to know this God. But let me tell you about the God I know. Because this is what it says. And now you're opening the door to other things. I would never use this as the definitive closed argument, ha-ha, I won. You lose, I'm right. It doesn't necessarily prove God's existence either. It proves that it makes more sense to believe in God, but it doesn't definitively go, yep, God exists, cool. So that's why I say this is a weaker argument. If you're going up against someone, and I hate saying going up, if you're discussing the existence of God with someone, intellectually, why can't I talk today? Intellectually, they wouldn't just be satisfied with, I put a bet on the one side that made more sense. If they really want to know, you're going to have to say some other things. So this is a great start. I think this is a great opener because it gets them thinking okay, he's right. Maybe it does make more sense to kind of believe even if you are wrong. Whoa. But then it opens the door for let me tell you about my Jesus. Or let me tell you about this. This is another reason. I looked at this, and this was just kind of like a, okay. And then I looked at, and we'll get into some of those other theories, but I wanted you to just, this is kind of what we're going to get into. This is like a little tiny sample, just like a little sprinkle of what we're going to be jumping into later. Like I said, we're going to have 8 weeks. Actually, I'll leave that on the board for you. We're going to have 8 weeks. I don't have notes other than these for anyone who's missing, so if you need to take one, you can. I'll keep extras in case they need it. If you're going to be missing, you'll get something like this. The reason I also think it'd be good for you to partner up with somebody is because I have these from my notes. They're not totally clear. I don't know if anybody's read the other side yet, but if you have, it just says like, your faith is intellectually satisfying and incredibly deep, and it's okay to have doubts and questions. It doesn't mean you don't have faith. Ask hard questions because there are hard answers. Good stuff that we kind of mentioned today. It's stuff I'm speaking off of. It tells you, there's the verse that we did, kind of why we need to know apologetics, what the goal is, just kind of stuff I hit today. I didn't put Pascal major because I don't know how to do that. But this isn't super clear. So if you have people that you're partnered up with, at least 2s, 3s, whatever it is, that way you can kind of say, all right, let's compare notes. You missed this week. Let me show you what Rob actually meant by this really confusing outline. And I'll help you along the way. So that's what we'll be doing. We're like short. Sweet. Cool, wind it early. So we got like 10 minutes. If you just want to find some groups tentatively, it doesn't have to be super solid, but if you just want to say like, hey, do you want to go through this crazy apologetics thing together, that'd be awesome. So we'll start with that. Yes?
I got a question. I wasn't necessarily obsequious to Pascal's wager,
Yeah.
but I did, I've used that before. I didn't know if they had a name. And it's worked with people up to a point, and I was wondering, did it work? Have you used that with people, and what were the results? I basically just said, what does it hurt to believe as opposed to not believe? And I told them, you go to hell or you go to heaven. But I was very basic. I didn't have all that.
I have talked to some people about this, and I've never used it as anything more than let me get your foot in the door. Yeah. Because of some of the other options. If they're really like, some people will say, well, you're just being, we'll get to some of this later, but they'll say, hey, Christians just have dumb faith. So you're just believing this because it's a little bit better. They're going to say that's not intellectually honest. Why would I listen to anything else you say? So I tend to not like to use this as a definitive, but I do use it as an opener. I have, but that's just only so I can keep talking and get them going. Like, okay, at least there's some validity, maybe, to believing in this. So that's why I use this. But no, I haven't used. The results have been okay, but only because it's just like a springboard to something else. Yeah. And we'll get to my favorite ones in a couple weeks, so we'll get to that. And, next week, if you want a quick preview, we're going to talk about worldviews, which some of you might have heard that was kind of a keyword a couple of years ago. But I'm not going to get into what it is, but we'll just talk about why it's important. And if you do know what worldviews, why can't I talk about worldviews? If you do know what worldviews are already, we are actually going to hit some stuff that usually people don't touch in worldviews. I'll go over a basic overview and then hit some presupposition stuff that's actually really cool and fun. So that'll be next week's. And yeah, so if you're gonna miss, I'm gonna print out notes each week with just like this. So if you do, I'll try and bring them each class so you can just get them the next week if you missed and then want to get with somebody else. So if you guys don't have any other questions, you can just find somebody else to get with real quick. And, I will tell you as far as the recordings, if somebody else needs them or if you want them, whatever. We'll try and figure that out this week, how we're going to get those out, where we put them, all that good jazz. So other than that, you guys are free to mingle. Cool. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. If you got any questions or anything, or if I haven't met you can come say hey, and I will do my best to remember your name. I'm terrible at it, but I will try.